Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 92nd episode of the Manor Podcast. I'm your co-host, Roger Bodee, joined as always with my best friend and other co-host, Michael Hamilton. Michael, it's been a long couple days. I'm a changed man since our last podcast. I've seen things, I've experienced things. I got that haircut I was talking about. Here, let me raise this up. My hair's shorter. My life is significantly shorter now.
No.
It's been a lot.
What's going on, buddy? You want to talk through some things?
Yeah, we're going to go through how horrendous my life has been. We'll talk about how great your life has been. And we're going to give it some yin and yang and some heaven and hell and some good and the bad and all that fun stuff. So does that sound like a good podcast episode to you?
Sounds good to me. Story time with the Manorcast.
Okay. So I guess my story technically starts before your story time because mine starts on April 25th, Thursday, and that was before you left, right, for the Alpha Clash tournament?
That is before I left. That's actually significantly before I left because my flight got delayed, but we'll get into that later. What happened with your trip?
And speaking of the Alpha Clash tournament, that was sponsored by the same people who sponsor our podcast that we should still talk about and shout out and say nice things about, right? The Realm Games?
Yeah, the Realm Games was there. They were running the event with they were running the event. A lot of the Alpha Clash dev team was there too, but the Realm Games, they ran the event. Everything ran pretty smoothly. And yeah, great job by our sponsors, the Realm Games. They're great.
Yeah, I'm sure it was one of the most phenomenally ran, beautiful events that the card game world has ever seen, sponsored by beautiful people doing beautiful things in beautiful card games. So if you want to be a part of all that beautifulness, be sure to go to the next Realm event that's near you. In fact, I'm okay with you hitting pause on the podcast episode, going to www.realmgames.com and looking at all of their events if you just want to do that now. If you're driving, pull off to the side of the road. If you're working, tell your boss you're quitting and then go do that. And just make sure you make it a priority.
Wait, they can't quit their jobs because if they quit their jobs, how are they going to give the realm all their money? Because they won't get money.
They'll be too busy winning all of the realm's money thanks to their fabulous prize packages, Michael Hamilton.
That's true. That's all right.
That you got some of this past weekend, but I'm getting ahead of myself now. So my story starts on Thursday, April 25th. You're supposed to get to the airport 2 hours beforehand and wake up. And our flight was at 8 a.m. So I wanted to be at the airport by 6 a.m., 6:30 at the latest. I set my alarm the night before. Turns out I set it wrong. And I wake up to Angela saying, "Hey, it's 6:15 in the morning. You should wake up." And I'm like, well, we got to go. So we start rushing out the door, rooming. We get halfway to the airport and we're like, oh, we forgot documentation for Austin. So then we have to turn around, go back to the house, and then go through airport. And we make it onto our flight in just the nick of time. So we make it onto the flight, and then we just spend the day relaxing in beautiful St. Thomas, and that day wasn't too bad overall, except for starting off in the worst possible way imaginable with just lots of stress whipping a baby around through an airport.
That makes sense. I'm glad you made your flight, though. That's missing a flight is rough.
I wish I missed that flight.
No.
Missing that flight would have been one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life.
Oh,
Talk to me about your Friday, April 26th. How did your April 26th go?
So my Friday, April 26th, I wake up bright and early, around the time you woke up Thursday, like 6:15, get to the airport. My flight leaves around 9. So I get up, get ready, get to the airport. And so I get on the plane. We get on the plane. We're getting ready to take off. And they're like, actually, there's an issue. We turned it off and back on again. That didn't fix it, so we're gonna wait for maintenance to come look at it. So
do they make sure the plane was plugged in first?
so we sit there in the on the runway. We're actually on the runway. We're like at the entrance to the runway. We're not by the gate anymore. We're like, we've moved, and they're like, you need to keep your seatbelts on. You need to stay seated because we're on the runway. We're not at the gate. So that's all happening, and we wait. Eventually, maintenance gets on the plane, and they're like, we need to redock the plane because maintenance could not fix the issue and it's going to take a little while. So we go back and my flight gets delayed about an hour. And so we sit around the airport for an hour and then they're actually like, actually, flight's delayed again till 7:30 p.m. You can get on a different flight. Our next available flight is Monday, which is way too late. So I'm like, all right, I'll be here at 7:30 p.m. Am I okay to like go home? And they're like, yeah, you'll be fine. Just be back 7:30. And I'm like, okay. So I went home, grumpy, and slept for 4 hours.
See, look, your Charlotte weekend was really bad too. So look at this.
Yeah, it was rough.
We're both at a low point. But then does your next flight go okay? And then you made it to beautiful Las Vegas?
Yeah, so I go back to the airport around 6 for my 7:30 flight. I'm like, we can squeeze an hour and a half instead of 2 hours. It's not an overseas flight, and the Indy airport's pretty good. It's usually pretty fast. Security's I've never had a longer than 30-minute wait in security. Things have been pretty good. So I sit at my gate for like an hour before we actually take off, and then 7:30 flight takes off. I get to Vegas at like 9-ish Vegas time because it's like a 4-hour flight and then 3-hour time zone change, and have to wait quite a while for an Uber to get to the airport. It's pretty busy. Friday night, Vegas airport. And then I Uber to the hotel that me and Zach Bunn were staying at, and we meet up. He gives me pizza, which is really great because I was so hungry after a 4-hour flight. He gives me some of his leftover pizza from dinner. After that, we go over to Ian's room, Wolfpack teammate Ian Schaefer, and we say hi to him. And then Matt Coles, who's not supposed to be there, he had no intention of going as far as I knew, pops out of the corner and he's like, hello. And I'm like, hi, Matt, what are you doing here? And that was cool. So Matt came out. He'd never played a game of Alpha Clash before that Friday, and he came out to the tournament.
Okay, we'll get into that in a minute. Cool.
Yeah, we'll talk about Matt when I talk about Saturday because he crushed it. But
yeah, interesting.
So we hang out and talk for a little while. There's just hang out for a little bit with everybody and then go back to our room and crash, basically. Talk a little bit about strategy for Sealed the next day. We thought Magnate was the best because he has 2 power. 2 power is pretty good.
That's a lot of power. That's double 1 power.
It is. It makes 2 toughness or 2 defense things not that good at attacking you when your contender has 2 power.
Yes, that is true. I would believe that.
Yeah, that was it for my Friday. Went back to the hotel room, passed out after hanging out with everybody. What happened your Friday?
It was pretty uneventful until I had to drive to get dinner with, we were going for my friend's wedding and there was like a pre-wedding dinner that night. And St. Thomas, they're not a U.S. like state or anything like that. Obviously they're a territory. So they drive on the opposite side of the road. And that's fine. I actually managed to drive that weekend. I rented a car and I drove on the opposite side of the road all weekend long. I didn't crash. I didn't get in any car accidents. I managed to drive just fine on this new driving system, and my brain kind of adapts where it's just like, oh, I have to wait for this green light to turn right to merge over. It's the right turns are now this long way that crosses traffic, but left turns are easy. You just get to like boost out on left turns. It was kind of interesting. But St. Thomas is like not a flat island. I would say it's basically just a giant mountain that sprouted out of the sea. And so the roads are like teeny tiny, but everybody still drives American cars. It's kind of like driving in Pittsburgh for anybody who knows anything like that, or like in the mountains of California, where basically like you're just constantly driving on like the side of a cliff going like 40 miles per hour while driving on the opposite side of the road. And it was terrifying. I hated it. It was one of the most stressful driving situations I've ever been in my entire life. And I got through it though. And I not only got through it that one day, I got through it 2 days. I got through it. I had to do all that same driving again on Saturday. So fun times. So if you're going to go to St. Thomas, don't take a baby, because then you don't have to worry about getting a car seat, and then you can hop in one of the taxis and the taxis can take you across the island. But the problem is when you go with a baby, the taxis and stuff like that, don't have a car seat. So then you need to get a baby safety car seat when you rent the car, and then you have to do all your driving yourself, loading your baby in and out. So there you go. April 27th, bum bum. This is peak Michael Hamilton. You're waking up. What's your breakfast of champions this day?
So April 27th, I wake up. Zach had ordered these overnight oats for us. He messaged me about it when I was at home before I got back to the airport for my second flight. He's like, hey, I'm going to order some of these for me. You want some? I'm like, sure. I haven't had overnight oats before. Sounds great. So he orders some. I wake up in the morning. He's up. He's grabbing a shower. And I'm like, I'm going to eat some of these oats. So I pull them out of the hotel room fridge and I start eating them. I'm like, these don't have like any flavor to these overnight oats. There's nothing to them. And then I get like through like 3/4 of my cup of overnight oats, and I eat like a bit off the side that's like, it's warm. It's not as nearly as cold as the rest. And the warm bite, it has so much flavor. It's got like honey in it. It's got warm berries. And I'm like, is it all supposed to taste like that?
So you're supposed to mix it.
So I basically like leave my breakfast out for another like half hour beside me and then finish the rest of it. And it's so much better when it's actually warm. And it was just like was frozen in the little hotel room fridge. So breakfast of champions was way too frozen overnight oats. And then a little bit of not too frozen overnight oats.
All right. It's important you get that nice frozen to not frozen ratio. Got to get it just right.
So Zach gets a shower. I get a shower. We are talking more about sealed, what we're expecting, what we're trying to do.
Talk to me about sealed. How do clash buffs work? Did you ever figure this out?
So we didn't find this out until we were actually at the event. We thought it worked that you could only play the clash buffs that your contender was legally allowed to play and constructed. But actually the way it works is, so all the clash buffs in set 3 cost 1 resource of it, whatever color the contender they play for is. But in sealed, you can play any clash buff as long as you have that color of resource to pay for it, basically. So you can be playing Magnate, who's a green contender, and you can put the blue clash buff in your deck or the red clash buff in your deck. You just need a blue or a red resource.
And they're just like tokens. They'll give them to you.
They're not like tokens. You have to open them in your sealed pool.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but I would be surprised if anyone didn't have 4 clash buffs. I think I ended up with 7 in my pool, but you're only allowed to play 4 because they still have that limit where you can only play 4. It just means that you can usually, if you're playing a 3-color deck, you'll usually be able to get to 4 clash buffs. And if you're not, then you maybe pick the wrong 3 colors.
Sure. Okay, that's interesting.
So we get there, we open our packs on the stream. I'm reading my cards, not really doing the best job verbalizing my thought process. I'm just like processing a lot of information. The blue clash buff is so good.
What does the blue clash buff do?
So it's 1 cost. They're all 1 cost. And it gives all of your clash cards either +2 power, attack, power. I don't remember whether I think it's attack. Or all your clash cards +2 defense for the whole turn. And you draw 2 cards. So that's a lot of cards. Yeah. So I'm looking at my.
But it doesn't affect your contender though, then, right?
Yeah. I think none of the clash buffs in the new set affect your contender. It's pretty interesting. They're just like, I think this is kind of a design choice because a lot of like 3 defense units, they're not very good. 2 and 3 defense units aren't very good because you can't attack your opponent's contender with them. Otherwise, you just die to a clash buff, which is like not where you want to be, and you want your clash cards to push damage. So that's why this is shortcutting a little bit, but we ended up playing a lot of everything that had 3 or less defense in our deck was some kind of value recursion card, not just like a body that we would play. But I guess that's not true. The 1 mana Torque, but
he's broken. Sure.
Yeah, I guess he also draws a card, so he counts. He counts the value card. But anyway, I think this opens the door for 2 and 3 defense clash cards to be a little bit better, a little bit more playable if this is the direction that clash buffs go in the future. Though I still think the 0 mana ones will need to be banned for these cards to be a big part of the metagame.
I would believe that.
Anyway, so we're building our pools on stream. I'm trying to make blue work because I have 2 of the blue clash buff. I really want to play this blue clash buff. It seems so good. And I'm looking and I have like 4 other blue cards that look playable to me. They're all clash cards. They all like have attack and defense and do things. And I look at all my other blue cards. I'm like, here's an accessory that when it's equipped, they mill for 1 when you attack with it. It doesn't seem like it does anything. Here's an accessory that puts bounty counters on anything. I have no synergy for bounty counters. I'm just looking at all my blue cards and I'm like, I don't think I can play blue unless I'm just playing 6 blue cards. So then I look at my red and my black, which I think are my 2 deepest colors. I have a couple black. I don't know what the rarity of them was. One was a 3 mana Morak that's a 2/2 that when he enters play, you can search your deck for any non-Morak clash card that costs 3 or less. So, and put it in your hand. Very, very good. There's a few other good black cards I have. There's a 2 mana 2/2 that has Necrotic, which is Death Touch for Magic. It just says anytime it does clash damage something, that thing will die at the end of the clash. Unless it's a contender, I guess. But it deals damage to another clash card. So that card seemed really good. It also buffed all of my. I don't know what the symbol is. It's the one that looks like a toxic waste symbol. I don't know, but it's a symbol of the new black contender. I don't know what his name is either. But anyway, so that card seems really good. I think 2 mana 2/2 Necrotic is already quite good. It just like you play it, it trades up on defense. It's a little bit hard to remove because it has 2 toughness or 2 defense. I'm gonna get that right eventually. And so I end up building. I like my black cards. I like my red cards, but there's not enough. There's not 34 good black and red cards. So I don't think I can play blue unless I put some really bad blue cards in my deck. And I don't want to put some really bad blue cards in my deck. So I look at my green and I look at my white. My white's also not very deep. I have no white clash buffs. But my green has 2 good clash buffs, or 2 of the green clash buff, which gives +2/+2 and trigger your clash card gets trigger victory. You can destroy an accessory, which actually ends up being huge in some of my games in the tournament. I didn't think it was that big of a deal when I put it in my deck. I thought it was just 1 mana for +2/+2, which is fine. I'm still happy to play a clash once it does that. But the trigger victory destroying an accessory ended up being really big throughout the weekend, or throughout the day. Not the weekend. It was only Saturday that we played.
Yeah. And what are deck sizes in sealed?
40 cards.
Okay.
So that's why when I had 6 blue cards, I needed to get to 34 of the other colors. But my green ends up being pretty solid. I have the 2 green clash buff. I have 2 of the 4 mana, the Avenging guy, I think his name is. And he's a 4 mana 3/3 that when he enters, you can, or trigger play, you can search your deck for a card called the Whistler and put it directly into play. And the Whistler is a 1 mana accessory that you can equip for 1. And basically gives you this ability where if you attack with something that's equipped with it, you can tap the Whistler and choose one of their clash cards, and that clash card has to attack the clash card that just attacked next turn, which is a lot of text, but basically it's like their thing has to hit your thing. It's pretty impactful if they have like a value 1/1 in play, like the 1 mana flare that you can pay 2 resources to draw a card. That card's really good. You can just like choose that thing and make that thing attack into your thing on their next turn, which is really nice because it's kind of like removal. It's like worse than just like killing the thing, obviously, and a lot of the time it doesn't work out, but the times it does, it's basically.
Do you get priority before you attack, like, or is it just like your turn starts, you have to attack immediately?
So this is actually a really long judge call that we had because this came up in one of my games where.
Yeah, because I imagine if you have like a way to kill your guy, then like you could just kill the guy and then like you don't have to attack it then.
Or if the clash card that you like taunt is what I'm going to call it, that you taunt with the Whistler, has like an activated ability that engages itself. Like you can just do that and then your thing can't attack. Oh no, it can't attack because it engaged itself. So it was new cards that there's not comprehensive rules out for. So they ruled that you could do anything beforehand as long as you didn't declare a different attack with that thing, and you couldn't pass your turn until you declared that attack with your thing. So yeah, so one of my rounds, my opponent actually put +2 power or +2 attack equipment on their thing before attacking, so I turned something that was supposed to be a chump attack into my clash card into a trade. But yeah, so that it did come up. But it also has this special line of text that says if the equip card is the Avenging guy, it gets +2/+2. So it combos really well with those 4 mana 3/3s because they become 4 mana 5/5s, which are huge. Like in sealed, it's really hard to get the quantity of big clash cards that you would want to fill out your deck with. In general, you want your deck to have a decent amount of higher cost things because early game you can resource them, and then late game they're great to just play out. In sealed, you're just not going to have the quantity of big things that you want.
Okay.
So getting access to,
and there's not like still cheap, efficient removal, I'm guessing, in this set.
Yeah, there's a 3 mana red card that deals 5 to a clash card that kills basically everything in the format.
Sure, but spending 3 for something like that, I assume it's not quick, so then you're
Yeah, it's
just
not. It's
losing the.
not. Yeah, it's not a quick play.
It has
And
all the same issues of all the other removal in the game at that point. Then
yeah, there really isn't that much removal because you can just attack, tap, or engage clash cards. Like most of the time that you need to kill something, you're just attacking it. And then there is some access to close combat. I think Magnate can give himself close combat when he's below 15 health, the contender, which is it comes up a lot because it's really good to just be able to attack their untapped things. And I think that card's going to be very good constructed, by the way, the new Magnate. But yeah, there's not a lot of removal. There's a lot of there's a few 1 damage effects. I had a 1 mana or a 1 or a 3 cost accessory that you could engage it, deal 1 damage to something, and you got a benefit if it killed that thing, which was huge for me also over the weekend. But yeah, there's not a lot of ways to remove problematic things.
unlucky. So control strategy is still not really where the game's going.
Actually, I think control is looking a lot better now. I was actually if you look at the constructed top 4, it was 4 control decks in the top 4. It was 3 of our red black controlling torque and 1 blue green black clarity control deck. And
Okay.
the top
So you would
8,
consider the red black deck you played control? Really? It seemed
it's
more mid rangey to me.
yeah, it's probably more mid rangey. It's on the slower side of mid range though. It's never killing someone early in the game. It has 1 copy of the 4 mana Unrivaled War. That's the only way it ever does damage early game, really, or does meaningful damage in the early game.
Okay.
It's just trying to survive until it can assemble its combo of 1 mana torque plus Here Comes the Boom, or overwhelm the opponent with 6 and 7 drops. Which I'd say is a pretty controlling strategy if you're just trying to survive till you can play these big 6 and 7 mana plays.
Yeah. But once again, getting ahead of ourselves. So
you
you built your sealed pool, you crushed sealed. Were the games fun, or were there did you feel like your deck building and gameplay decisions matter, or do you feel like your bombs just carried you?
I lost 1 game that day, and it was before the tournament started. Me and Zach, we finished building on stream, and we're like, "You want to play a practice game?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." So he goes first, and I think I made a couple mistakes that game, and I definitely learned a lot about mulliganing from that 1 practice game. I shipped a lot of cards because in constructed, I think you can generally send back a lot of cards because constructed decks are kind of built to have strong early games and strong mid games. And if you don't have a strong early game, you can ship a lot of cards. Plus, you just want to find your 0 mana clash buffs and your best cards. But in limited, you don't really have that luxury. If you have a card that's medium in the early game, you should probably be keeping that, because having something that does something in the early game is really important in limited, so you don't just get ran over, especially if you're going second. And because of that, you also want to make sure you keep a card that can resource to play that, because in these limited 3-color decks, maybe you ship back all your other black cards and you have this 1 mana black card that you want to play. You're just a lot more likely to not draw another black card that you can resource, because you're playing 3 colors now. So your deck is less reliable, less consistent. But the mulligan, so I think you basically need to adjust your mulligan strategy for that. And I learned that in that 1 game I played against Zach, where I kind of made some mediocre mulligan decisions, and it punished me, and I learned a lot from it. The rest of the rounds, I think my deck was pretty good, and there were a couple rounds that I would have lost if my opponent had drawn or had a bomb in some spots, or had something pretty impactful, or the right clash buff at the right time. And you do everything you can to play around what you can play around. It's a little bit harder when you don't even know all the cards in the sets.
Yeah, true.
But one game my opponent passed with 5 mana open, and I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. I'm just gonna play a thing, and they didn't respond. And I'm like, if I pass, you can't spend your mana. So I'm like, I guess I pass. I don't know what you're doing. So that actually happened quite a few times. I'm just like, all the things you can do on your opponent's turn are counter attack or counter play and counter things. So if I make a play and they don't play a counter play card, I'm like, well, if I pass here, you're just wasting your mana. Sounds like I'm passing. So yeah, I think that was very funny. Not knowing the cards, but knowing to be knowing how Alpha Clash mechanics work, and being interested.
Yeah, quick play cards still not good, turns out.
Yeah, they're trying. Some of the cards do feel kind of powerful, and they have situational spots where they're good. Like I played there's a 2-mana red trap that says deal damage to it or counterattack, deal damage to the attacker equal to the number of clash cards you control. So in limited, you can get into like some somewhat board stally things where you have 4 or 5 clash cards in play. Leaving up 2 is not a big cost, and if they attack you with a 4 defense thing, you just kill it. So yeah, I think the format, I've kind of rambled a bit, but I think the sealed format ended up playing really well. I think both your deck building decisions and your gameplay decisions matter a lot. I think between the very flexible mulligan system where you have 8 cards and you can choose any combination to send back, which there's like a million permutations there. I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot. and having a very interesting resource decision every turn, which card you're going to resource, or if you're going to skip resourcing, which I wouldn't recommend before like turn 5 or 6, but on turns, there was a lot of games where I'd skip resourcing on turn 6 and then resource again on turn 7, and I think that was correct. And then there were some games where I just resourced every turn till like turn 9, and I think that was correct too. So format is very skill testing. I think it plays very well. The contenders, I think the white and the black contender are a little bit weak and sealed. I think they'll be better in draft, but I don't know if the product is draftable, which is unfortunate because I think there's a lot of really cool limited cards in it.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. It was going to be so in top 8 you didn't draft then? You just built another sealed pool, or you played the same decks?
We actually played the same sealed pool for top 8. So I do kind of miss getting to... I like in Magic where you would play your sealed pool and then you would draft the top 8. I think that's really cool. And I think that's like honestly one of the biggest weaknesses of Alpha Clash not making every product draftable is when, because these are 10 card packs, you can't make a 40 card deck by drafting 3 packs. Maybe there's some world where you're supposed to draft like 6 packs or 5 packs and build your deck then, which I think would be pretty cool. I love drafting, but yeah, these products aren't made for draft. And I think they have a chance to have a token, but they don't all have tokens. So it would even already be a little bit problematic where some packs would have 10 cards, some packs would have 9 cards.
Right, yeah. And like you can't really make, it's hard to make a wheeling decisions with 10 cards in an 8-person pod, like it's because you're only going to see 2 cards. So it's just like, it just seems very random at that point.
Though I am a big fan of 4-person drafts. I think you could easily just like plan it to be a 4-person draft game.
2-person, 2 pods of 4 top 8 draft.
Well, you could just do like top 8, you play one game at top 8 and then the top 4 drafts or something. Or you could do like, well, I don't know what you do for the final. You could cut to top 16 and have 2 drafts for top cut. I don't know. Top 8's so arbitrary anyway, so it doesn't matter.
No, it's a fundamental bedrock of all card gaming, Michael. It has to be exactly 8 players.
Yeah, you could never cut to top 16, do 4-person drafts, and then cut to top 4, have the winner of each of those drafts draft again. That's you could never do that. That would not work. There's no way we could do that.
Why not cut the top 10 and then have 2 people do a playoff system and then you do top 8? Right?
Well, the reason I was this is
so you cut the top 10 and the top 4 people are safe, but then no, the top 6 people are safe, and then the last 4 people have to battle it out. No, wait, no.
Okay, here you go. You cut the top 10, the top 2 are safe, and then you do 2 pods of 4, and then those are the other 2 spots in the top 4.
Okay, I'm in.
No, we're not doing that. That sounds ridiculous. So one other thing that came up in the tournament was when you're playing a new set with new cards and nobody knows what any of the cards do, and some of the games get a little bit board stally, time is a real factor. There were a lot of games that went to draws, and also with the current rule that is 5 additional turns, that was basically the Magic rule. When you go to time, you have 5 additional turns. They were some long rounds sometimes, and it did make me appreciate Flesh and Blood's like time in the round. You get 1 turn. Good luck. The game's over.
Is it also the Magic rules then? So like, let's say there's time in the round. We're on game 2, but I won game 1. If we don't complete this game, I win the round.
That's right. Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, I do appreciate how Flesh and Blood draws and time works, though. It's also interesting where, well, I'm going to wait till Sunday and then I'll talk about the draw system more.
Okay. Yeah, because like I don't mind the mechanics of how draws are determined. I still think how tiebreakers work, though, I guess. And like how they factor in for that is pretty poor in Flesh and Blood, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
you just what was that?
I can break down my rounds real quick if you want.
Go for it.
So round one, I played against Mo Bogsley. We actually talked and worked together on our constructed deck, and he was playing a blue-black. I think it was just 2 colors. It might have been 3 colors, but mostly blue and black. And he was playing the Contender Lin. It was a very controlling deck. I beat him, and then 2-0, or I won all my games 2-0, so I'm going to skip that part.
Oh, Mr. Michael Hamilton 2-0 in left and right.
Round 2, I played against, oh gosh, I can't remember her name. Someone who was very nice, and we played a match. Then round 3, I played against Zach again. The first game went really long, and he was pretty far ahead, and I was taking a little bit longer than I probably should have to make some decisions in game 1. And I think he got a little bit impatient, and I think he made a small mistake because of that, a couple small mistakes, and that was enough for me to catch back up in the game that I was behind in. We finished the first game with like 22, 23 minutes left in the round. Game 2 was a lot quicker, and I got that one. And then I played against Matt Coles, who I said I would talk about. He was 3-0, started learning the game for the first time the day before. And I think we were the stream match that round. We played a pretty close match. And then after that, I was against Ian, who was my last teammate. So I was just running through the team, and we actually talked about it. And I talked to Keith to make sure this is allowed, but you are allowed to concede at any point. And because of how tiebreakers work, how your opponents do in each round is better for your tiebreakers. Since I had played against both Matt and Zach and Mo, though Matt and Zach were the stronger considerations, Ian just decided to concede to me to help Matt and Zach's tiebreakers. He was still locked to be, I think, second seed because we were the only undefeated at that point, or soft locked to be second seed because weird things can happen in tiebreakers when they use the Magic tiebreaker system. So Ian conceded to me. Matt and Zach both won their games. So between the 4 of us, we went 17-3, and all losses were to each other, which was really cool. They announced top 8. I'm in first seed, Ian's in second seed, Matt's in third seed, and Zach's in fourth seed. Just clean.
Best team in Alpha Clash. Beat that team, Blue Pitch.
So in top 8, I play against someone named Drake for my first round. I beat him up. He has one card that I think is really good. He has this 4-mana Pestilence.
Oh, it wasn't a 1 dance?
No. There's a
he didn't have a Hennessy in his hands?
Stop. There's a 4-mana Pestilence in the new set.
Did he start from the bottom of the bracket and then he was there?
And it gives someone -3, it gives a Clash card -3/-2 when it enters. That card is so good. Just 4 mana for a 3/3 that gives something -2/-2. That's just clean. It's just a very good card. I think it's got a constructed power level card. Obviously great and limited. He resourced it both games. I was thrilled. I don't think he had enough green to play it, so he just like resourced it to make sure he had 1 green to play a single green card. But I was so happy when he resourced it. Then in round the top 4, I play against Matt Coles again, this legend. He's never played this game. He's top 4 of the event. And we play another close one. I take him down. And then in the finals, it's a rematch against my round 1 opponent, Mo Bogsley. Unfortunately, Mo cut through both Ian and Zach to take him out. But we play in the finals, and I took him down. I think I might have lost the game to him, actually. Maybe I didn't go undefeated other than that. Or maybe I did lose a game. I don't remember. And that was my Saturday. So I took down the sealed tournament, playing a sweet deck, had a really good time, and got a really cool prize magnate card that I should have had ready, but it's on my desk somewhere. I will find it.
Yeah, it's right underneath the stack of paper clips. And
no, I got it. It's right here. Ta-da! It looks backwards on my side, but yeah.
Are you going to use it? Is it usable? Is it tournament legal?
It is tournament legal, but I'd have to take it out of this really cool case, and I don't know if I want to do that. So I'm going to hold on.
Why do you have to take it out of the case?
Oh, because it's not a contender. It's like a Clash card that goes in your deck.
Ah, I thought it was a contender.
Yeah, there are 2 Magnate contenders, but this is Magnate King of the Gambit. It's a 7-drop from the set.
Cool. Well, congratulations. You're good at card games. Who knew?
How was your Saturday? Bouncing back.
So Saturday was fine. Nothing was too crazy on Saturday except for it was the wedding ceremony, right? I didn't really get to watch the wedding ceremony because I brought a baby with me, and little toddler Austin wanted to build sandcastles on this beach wedding, and he's just like sandcastles, sandcastles, beach, beach. He was just losing his baby mind because he just wasn't napping very well, and he turns out not only do regular people not sleep well when they're traveling because of all the different arrangements, toddlers also don't sleep very well when they're traveling and moving all around the world. So, fun fact there. So instead of like actually like watching the wedding, I really more so watched Austin fill this palm tree with sand that we were sitting next to. I was basically like, Austin, you have to fill the holes in this. I was like, I was whispering this, but I was like, Austin, you have to fill all the holes in this palm tree with sand, and then he'd pat it down, and then he'd and then when he was turning around, I'd knock all the sand out of the palm tree, and then he'd be like, oh no, there's more holes, Austin. He'd be like, oh no. Well, he didn't say oh no, but then he would get more sand and pat it down, and he just was obsessed with playing with the sand on this beach. So I think Ben and Julia got married. I'm not 100% sure. I was there, but I really wasn't like listening or paying attention very much. I was more so stopping this baby from ruining their wedding more that I brought. I actively mitigated this threat to their wedding that I brought to their wedding from ruining their wedding. So that was my Saturday. Angela got to watch it though, and she said it was a lovely wedding, so that's good.
Oh, I love weddings. I think they're usually really, really sweet. I've definitely cried at a few.
This is the first wedding I've ever been invited to my whole life. That's all the other reason why I had to go. I can't be invited to one wedding and not go to the one wedding I'm invited to.
We were not nearly as close when I got married.
Nope. I didn't even think I really knew you.
No, it was recently before you moved to Indianapolis. So
yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's the most significant stressful factor thing was just like managing a baby on a beach is not easy. He threw sand post wedding. Was just like, I'm gonna throw this sand. It's like, no, you can't throw sand. That's not a good thing to do.
But it looks so cool when it flies everywhere.
He had a good time on the beach though. He liked building his sand castles, which were really just piles of sand. But he was trying. There were also just wild chickens and roosters just hanging out all over the island. They're just chilling, like roosters and chickens just there. Like just like imagine like you're just walking down the street and there's just like a chicken and their chicks and a rooster just hanging out on the side of the road, and like that happens all the time over in St. Thomas because I guess there's just like no natural predators to like gobble them all up. So he wanted to boop a lot of chickens and roosters, and it was a lot of stopping him from trying to touch chickens and roosters as well. So Sunday.
Okay, so after the tournament Saturday night, we actually went out to dinner, and I regretted going out. I wish I just went to bed. I was so tired. I had a big headache.
Sunday. What about craps? When did you play craps?
So the tournament went too long. We just didn't get to play craps.
There was no craps on the weekend? So, I don't mind that I did. Okay. I thought my weekend was bad.
There was craps happening. The craps just happened in the morning before the tournaments.
Okay.
Because the convention hall opened at 11 a.m. and none of us were on Pacific time. So we were all up like 3 to 5 hours before the convention hall opened each day. So the craps
Did you play craps?
Morning. I did not. I watched craps for about 10 minutes. While I was talking to Zach and Matt and Ian. And
did they all win money at craps?
The time that I was talking to them, I think Matt was up like $80 and Ian was up like $50 when I left.
Look at that. Free money.
Yeah. So anyway, Sunday I wake up, still have a headache, but it's much better than the night before. Eat the overnight oats. Leave them out for about an hour before I eat them this time to get them nice and thawed out. Then we head over. I think we met. I think we didn't head over for a while because, again, we woke up way too early. We talked about our decks. We put Matt's deck together, which ended up being green, black, clarity, because we didn't have enough stuff to make another copy of red, black, torque, which was the deck that we had worked on, because we actually could have if Matt let us know he was coming, but he wasn't even planning to play the constructed event. He kind of got talked into it because the prize support was so good and we had cards for him.
Oh, did you all qualify for the Pro Tour then on the Saturday event though?
Yeah, so we all got a Pro Tour invite from the Saturday.
Okay.
So
can you sell those now that you have multiple?
Yeah, you can. Them? But right now, my plan is to use the first one for the Pro Tour and the second one for, I don't remember what they called it, but it's essentially nationals, which will be in early 2025. So there's going to be a Pro Tour at the end of 2024 and then nationals in 2025. Progenitor's Gambit, I think, is their name for it, but it's basically nationals.
Okay.
Though I'm planning to go to the next Clash Ground. Spoilers, so
where is
maybe
it?
I can win more. I believe it is not announced yet, but
there's
going to be another one in the U.S. I have an idea, but I am not going to say it on air.
Okay, I'll ask you off air.
Yeah, you can ask me after, and I will tell you where I believe it is, but it's not confirmed. It's just things I heard over the weekend led me to believe I have an idea of where it's
going. I love me some good card game rumors, so looking forward to it.
So anyway, Sunday, we talk about the deck, talk about sideboards, make our final sideboarding decisions, get to the venue around 11, a little before 11. There's a huge line to even go in, so we wait.
Huge line.
Well, yeah, because it's at Level Up Expo, which the doors to Level Up open at 11. So the line was like so long. There were a million cosplayers. It was really cool seeing all the cosplayers. I really like seeing.
Did people seem like generally interested in Alpha Clash at the event or no?
Yeah, there was. So both days had around 50 players in the tournament, but there was like a demo booth that was running next to the tournament, and people would walk by, see that there was like a card game tournament going on. They're like, "Ooh, what's this?" And the demo booth was like very busy. They're also giving out a lot of free stuff, which I'm sure helped. But the game is good, so the game is good, and they give out and they're very generous with their products. So if you see Alpha Clash happening at a convention, you should check it out. Get free stuff, learn how to play the game. It's a good time.
Ooh, free stuff.
Anyway, so eventually we get in, we go register, or we had paper deck lists we fill out, and there's I think 6 of us playing this red black torque deck. It's basically a deck that's kind of you, me, and Zach worked on. I think you kind of were like, I want to play Warthog, 4 mana, ping thing in my torque deck. I can ping my own torques. Give them plus.
Did Warthog make the cut?
Warthog did not make the cut. It got cut, unfortunately. But it is how we got to black in the first place, was wanting to play some Warthogs in the deck. But basically, all the 4-drops are so impactful that you can play instead. You can play Here Comes the Boom. You can play Kilimanjaro. These cards just like are big tempo plays, and Here Comes the Boom can be card advantage as well. And they're just really impactful cards. And the 5-drops are all really impactful with 5 mana torque and 5 mana death. There's just not really room for a clunky 4 mana play in there. So we ended up not playing Warthog, even though we were such a slow controlling deck. We just needed our 4-drops to kind of catch us up, because our early game plays were not very like tempo positive. We have the 1 mana death. That's just a 1/2 that when it dies goes back to your hand. 1 mana 1/2, not huge. And our 2 mana card was just a 2 mana torque. It was just another 1/2 that when it dies you draw a card. So 2 mana for a 1/2, not a very good deal, but we needed red card to hit off the Weber's Binoculars that we ended up playing 3 copies of. It's a 1 mana accessory that you can pay 1 to attach to or equip, and when you attack with your thing, you can engage it to look at the top 3 cards and get a 1 or a 2-drop Clash card or accessory, so you can find this 2 mana torque and usually resource him, but at least if you need to play him, he's a 1/2 that draws a card when he dies. So our early game
really just looking for your 1-cost torques.
Yeah, you're really trying to dig for the 1-cost torques, because the 1-cost torque is probably the best card in the deck because it draws a card with the torque contender, and it combos so well with both 6 mana flare and Here Comes the Boom. So we just really want those. Then basically, and our 3 mana play was Death the Relentless, which is just a 3 mana 2/3 that when it dies, you get to go search your deck for another Death the Relentless. And none of these cards are super tempo positive. So we just didn't end up having room for another tempo negative 4-drop, even if it would get a lot of value over the course of the game. We just had enough value. So no Warthogs, unfortunately. 4 Here Comes the Boom, 4 Kilimanjaros, and 1 of the Unrivaled War, the 4/4 that when it enters does 3 to something, were 4 drops. And yeah, the deck ended up being really good, better than we kind of realized when so many of us did so well with it. And during the day, I played against a lot of different decks, more than I expected. The field ended up being fairly diverse with 15 torques out of 50, so that's like a 30% meta share.
Oh yeah, that's not terrible at all, especially given
yeah,
like the top 8 looked like it was just like 4 torques, right?
I think there were 5 torques. There were 4 of us on red black, and then 1 mono red torque that made.
So 15 torques total and 5 in top 8. It's a pretty good conversion.
Yeah, it is. So 6 of us were on the red black torque, which I think I can say was probably the best deck, though the blue, green, black clarity deck I played in the semifinals was really, really cool. It was just like hard control, blue, green, black clarity. It had a few traps. It had this combo where it was playing Spatial Gateway, I think, and the 1 mana Pestilence. It's a 2/1, and Spatial Gateway lets you pay 1 to return it to your hand when it dies. So you would recur your 1 mana Pestilence, play them a bunch of times, go face, attack their face for 2 damage. Then your guy would die because all commanders have 1 power. Then you play it again and shrink their stuff. It was really cool. Yeah, I don't remember where I was going.
Sure. So Rack Black. So your guys' deck was really good, best deck in the room, but you wound up falling short to Pete Budensek in the finals, right? He was on Black Red Torque though. How similar were your guys' lists?
It was basically the same deck. So we were actually in a testing Discord with some other Flesh and Blood pros. Mo Bogsley, Chris Brummett, I think is his last name. I hope that's right. And Pete Budensek were in there. And then a couple other Flesh and Blood pros that didn't end up going. Dan Rakowski, who we actually had on the podcast to talk about Alpha Clash a few months ago. And someone named N, who I don't actually know who that is, but they seemed really nice in the Discord chat. And that was our group, plus me, Zach, and Ian were in there. And we basically shared our red black list with them about 2 weeks before the tournament, and they worked on it, and they were like, this deck seems really good, we're all going to play it too. And I'm like, makes sense, the deck's very good.
Yeah, so, checks out.
Yeah, so the 6 of us, everyone except Matt that was there, ended up on red black, and Matt was not on red black because he didn't have the cards. He played this green black clarity list that was cool, but not nearly as tuned, and definitely worse than the blue green black clarity deck that made the semifinals.
Okay. Do you think you could have won that game, or is it just like outplayed, or like how? So the finals, like what could have happened differently?
So I'm gonna set the stage. My flight, 10:54 p.m. I finished my semifinals after a long judge call and a bunch of other things around 9:50 p.m. maybe 9:40. Very late. It was very late in the evening. I thought if I played a finals, I was not going to be able to fly out. So I talked to Pete. I'm like, is there any world you're up for doing best of 1 for the finals? And he's like, no, I'm not doing best of 1 unless I can go first. He said, I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not giving up my first. Let's just start playing. So we play. I think the first game I made, I want to go back and rewatch these games because I believe I made a mistake in the first game, but I do not remember the first game very well. It was long. I remember I saw 0 clash buffs in the first 8 turns, which is pretty rough. I think Pete played really well too to get ahead and kind of capitalize on me not having these clash buffs to kind of get value trades. He made some lines that I think I would have been able to punish pretty well if I had clash buffs. So he took some risks, but I think he felt like he needed to. Going second, you kind of have to take risks, and it worked out because I didn't see the clash buffs, which I know we talked about this a week or 2 ago, and I said that who draws more clash buffs doesn't decide the game, but it can be pretty tough when you see actual 0. And I think that was a big part of me losing that game. So then the second game, I don't think I played particularly well that game either. I did get to go first. I think I drew a little bit better than Pete, and I think I played fairly solid. And I don't know exactly. My head was not super in the game. I was very worried about making my flights, and I ended up winning the second game. And then the third game, I think I messed up the early game pretty badly. There was one point where I paid resources to open the portal, which means when the portal's open, your 1 mana 1/2 death doesn't return to your hand. And he played the 3 mana death as a 2/3, or he had the 3 mana death, and I had exhausted my 1 mana death, which meant he could attack it with his 2/3. So he just got to eat my death. And I decided that I wasn't going to let him do that. I was going to use a clash buff on it, which clash buffs are very precious. You do not want to use them to protect a 1 mana 1/2 very often. And I think either I shouldn't have
Especially when
opened
the 2/3
portal
replaces itself.
Yeah. So I just basically kept my 1/2 alive for an extra turn, which that was not a very good use of my clash buff. And I think that combined with a couple turns where I maybe equipped the binoculars instead of just like developing my board led to me falling too far behind. And then there was one turn where I think after making those mistakes, I think there was a chance I was okay in the game, but I needed to like get lucky kind of. And there's a point where I had a death that had killed something when it entered, a 5 mana death. So it was a 4/5, and I could have attacked it into his exhausted Kilimanjaro, which is a 4/4. And instead, I was like, I don't think he'll attack his Kilimanjaro into my death because it's so bad for him if he does that and doesn't clash buff. If I clash buff my thing, I'll just eat his Kilimanjaro for free. And instead, I could have just attacked his thing and made him use a clash buff, or like force him to have a clash buff, and if he doesn't have it, I get to eat his thing because I'm kind of behind from playing a little bit loose or bad in the early game. I think I need to take that risk, and I instead went face with the death. He just attacks Kilimanjaro or attacks his Kilimanjaro into my 3/4 death, and he chooses not to clash buff it. So I just have to bin my death, and I think that was kind of like that sequence of him not needing to use a clash buff to kill my death, and me not trying to get a clash buff out of him by attacking into the Kilimanjaro. I think that sequence kind of led to me losing a game that I made some small mistakes earlier in the game and also was going second in. So you kind of you need things to go right when you're going second in the mirror because the decks are so similar. Anything that gives you an advantage is pretty big, and going first definitely gives you an advantage. So I think Pete played really well. I think for not having the deck until fairly shortly before the event, he picked it up very well, played it very well. And I think if he keeps playing Alpha Clash, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with.
I would believe that. He's good at card games too.
Mm-hmm. So then I guess before that finals, I have a few things set up. First, I'm borrowing a bunch of cards. I'm like, can I just leave these cards here and run out after I finish my final, or once I'm out of the tournament, to Keith from the Realm, who was very kindly letting me borrow my deck. He's like, yeah. So after I lose the game, I'm like, good game, Pete. Should I wait? And then I look at some people. I'm like, it's like 10 or something, 10:05. It's very late. I'm like, should I even try to make my flight? My flight was leaving in 50 minutes. And they're like, yeah, go for it. The Vegas airport's good. I'm like, okay. I run out the door, call my Uber, get in my Uber at 10:12, which the Uber got there very quickly.
It's Vegas,
and
yeah.
I Uber to the airport. It's a 12-minute Uber ride. I get to the airport at 10:24. My flight's at 10:54. So I have 30 minutes to get on the plane, and the gates closed like 15 minutes. But fortunately, there was like no line at security. It took like 3 to 5 minutes to get through security. I ran down the hall all the way to my gate, got on my plane with like 5 minutes to spare. I did not think I was making that flight.
Lucky you. But I wish I made my flights on Sunday.
Yeah, so I got on the plane, went home, had a really good time. Felt bad I didn't get to say bye to everybody as much as I wanted to, but I did not want to miss my flight. And yeah, it was a great event. And part of why I'm so sure I'm going to the next one, wherever it is because of how good of a time I had at this one. And yeah,
hopefully I can make that one.
Yeah, tell me about your Sunday.
My flights were canceled or delayed significantly, so I was flying into Miami. Miami had a connecting flight to Indianapolis. We had an hour time between our two flights. Our flight was delayed like 80 minutes, and basically at the gate, I was talking to one of the service reps, and they're like, well, we could rebook you now, but there's a chance you could still make it for your flight to Indianapolis back, and there's no upside to rebooking now because if we have to rebook you, you can just rebook in Miami. And I was like, cool. So I won't rebook now. I'll wait till I get to Miami and see where I'm at, where we land. Cool. Figure it out there. Land in Miami, look at my phone, and they had automatically rebooked me without me doing anything because if had the flight to Miami to Indianapolis left on time, I would have missed it. But it was delayed an hour too. So we could have made it home on that flight had we done the strategy that I personally wanted to implement me implement, but American Airlines forced me to rebook onto a different flight, give me a hotel voucher. But this is all also with my 2-year-old son, or turns 2 in a month. So he's just losing his baby mind just in an airport for like 10 hours. Just not a great time for him. Uh, he's like looking at the airplanes. He's like, outside airplane, outside. It's like, no, you can't go run around outside with the airplanes, Austin.
Oh.
It's not a thing you can do. Uh, so we then get rebooked to a flight to Monday at 3. At 3:30, at 3 o'clock p.m., Austin decides that moving walkways are awesome, and they're especially awesome if you stick your finger in one. And he sticks his finger in a moving walkway and slices it open, and he's screaming, and there's blood everywhere, and he's just this whole thing. We call emergency services over, and we go to I run into like the nearest gift shop, and I'm like, is there an emergency medical thing anywhere in this airport? And they're like, no, we can call somebody over to us. And I was like, okay. So all these gift shop ladies are just like, oh, you're so cute, and
as he's like screaming in pain with his finger cut open.
All things considered, Austin's way tougher than I gave him credit for. He kind of chilled out after a while and was just like okay with it. And he would point to all, he's like, Mickey Mouse, and they just handed him a Mickey Mouse. And then they're like, here's a puppy, and they just handed him a puppy. And I even took out my wallet. I was like, I'll pay for these. And I'm like, no, it's fine. And then there's super glue on the corner, and it's a pretty deep cut on his finger. And pro tip, clean out the wound for whatever you have. If you have like a deep cut or a gash or something like that, like use like antibiotics, any antiseptic things like hand sanitizer or whatever, rubbing alcohol, clean it out, and then try to super glue it shut. Just because like a bandage isn't going to work, and super glue kind of just like works through the blood to work a seal around the finger. So I super glue it shut and get a bandage on it, and the bleeding stopped. But I'm still concerned because I'm like, he hasn't been seen by a doctor. And then the emergency services people from the airport come, and they're like, he has a 3-hour time window for his finger for him to get stitches or professional help, or it's just too late. It's just 3 hours. That's it. The flight home was 2 hours and 53 minutes.
No.
So I wind up boarding, sitting there thinking about it, unboard, get off with Austin. Angela flies home with our luggage, basically. And then I have to take this screaming, crying, half bleeding, very tired toddler running through an airport with him. Get him to an ER, sit him down in an ER, and they're just like, yeah, the 3-hour time window is not a thing. You did everything right. He's fine. And I'm like,
oh, so you could have taken the flight.
Second flight home, I could have taken and been fine on. But nope. At first, the people at the gate were like, "Oh, this is an emergency medical situation. We'll rebook you for a flight later." And then I get on my app later. I never see a rebooking confirmation. I'm like, "Hey, I had an emergency service thing. Can I rebook to a flight coming out tonight?" And they're like, "No, it shows that you boarded that plane and your trip is done." And I was like, "Well, I'm still in Miami. Is there anything we can do?" And they're like, "No." And I was like, "Cool." So
because you scanned your boarding pass?
Yeah. So I wind up finding a $200 Spirit flight from the Fort Lauderdale airport, which is like 50 minutes north. And so that lands in Columbus, Ohio at midnight. So Austin and I fly from Fort Lauderdale to Columbus, Ohio. Angela lands in Indianapolis, drives over to Columbus, Ohio, meets us at the Columbus airport at midnight. And then from midnight, I make the 3-hour drive back to Indianapolis, and I arrive home. And that was 15 hours ago. And here I am recording a podcast. So if you're ever thinking about traveling with a baby, just don't do it. It's not worth the risk. It's kind of like, I was talking to Angela about it on the way home. Like, you're not going to have horror stories like this. Like most of the time, you're probably going to be fine. But it's kind of like if you walk through a door and you're like, there's a 5% chance if you walk through that door, your head's going to be cut off. Well, it's like, sure, 95% of the time, sure, I'm fine, but I'm not walking through that door because the downside risk is just so high. And the downside risk of things going wrong where like your toddler sticks their finger in a moving walkway or their flight gets delayed, or then you have to deal with a crazy baby and we didn't know where to find diapers, and like we didn't know how to find good food for him, and like we just had to like if that stuff happens to me personally or like an adult or like another like person, then like cool, like we can figure it out and think it through and be rational and like cool, like it's not that big, like it sucks, but like I can handle that situation. With a baby, it's just like it's like putting your entire life on impossible mode. And I'm just like, I love him so much, and like it hurt me so much seeing him be hurt and having him be miserable like this over the weekend. It was incredibly physically, mentally, and emotionally draining on every level of every plane of existence that I am currently living on. And I'm very happy to be home, and I've officially earned my solo alone trip to Japan that I'm not taking a toddler on in 2 weeks. And I'm very much looking forward to that trip now, because I get to every trip for the rest of my life, it will not be with a baby. So it's like already starting from a better spot. I'm so looking forward to never traveling or never flying. Like I'll go on a road trip with him. That's fine. Cause like road trips, you can handle things a lot better, but
you're in more control.
Never, ever again will I ever take a child under 5. I think I'm going to set the limit at it on an airplane or book a flying trip with them. Just not worth the risk.
Fair. It makes a lot of sense about you getting off the plane. I feel like in hindsight, like obviously he would have been fine, everything was fine, but like when the paramedic tells you that, and then like if you do the flight anyway and something happens to where like his finger is like permanently damaged or something,
right? Yeah, like I was almost crying
so
on the flight, like thinking like it was a really hard decision. So I guess like in the sense of once again mitigating like the worst downside risk, like I'm happy that like I got off the flight and that he's okay and that everything worked out in the end. But it's just so hard in the moment.
Yeah. Heaven and hell. What a weekend.
Heaven and hell. But I think really the most important thing is that the next time you're thinking about sticking your finger in a moving walkway,
don't do it.
Don't do it. And always remember, mind your manners.